Can I please have Greg Wilcox to the stage? Greg is Joe Nagle's husband and will be sharing their story.
Good afternoon. First, let me start by thanking Scott and Charger for their work to honor our officers, Dave McCullen for bringing Joe's name to Scott, and Chris Murphy, who has been by my side through this entire journey as a friend, as my COVID +1, and for the past 2 years as my partner. It is an honor and a privilege to be here, to meet other families, and to talk about Joe and tell a little bit of our story. As Scott said, my name is Greg Wilcox. My life partner, Joseph V. Nagle Jr., police officer with the Boston Police Department for 30 years, died by suicide on August 4th, 2019. Joe had beautiful blue eyes, a great smile, an infectious laugh, and the best Boston accent. He was both a great man and a great police officer. And while not legally married, Joe was my husband in heart and spirit. He was my partner and my best friend. We were together for 27.5 years. Joe was one of 6 children, an Irish Catholic boy born and raised in South Boston. Yes, that Southie. To the best of my knowledge, he had at least 2 run-ins with Whitey Bulger and his crew. He was a child of the 70s. He loved disco and soul music and could dance at a wedding or a party like nobody's business. He never left the house unless he looked his best. And I know he's going to get me for this one, but first in his Adidas Gazelles and matching Champion sweatshirts and ball caps, later in head-to-toe Under Armour or a Bugatti shirt and expensive jeans and shoes. I could easily talk for hours about Joe and our life together, and I'll share just a few moments of highlights and laughs. Joe and I met in 1992. A mutual friend introduced us at a bar in Cambridge. Joe was out with his friends, a Mass State Trooper, a member of the U.S. State Department, a local firefighter, and a banker. It was like the village people had come to life. He introduced himself with a wave, a smile from under his hat, and a quiet hi. Within a year of meeting, Joe and I were living together in the Charlestown Navy Yard overlooking Old Ironsides. We loved being in the city and all that it offered, but by 1998 moved to the suburbs just north of Boston and quickly settled into our home of 100 years. We shared a lot of interest, working on our house and in the yard, having dinner at our favorite restaurants, getting to know the staff and the owners, and trust me, we only needed to text a bartender, and we had 2 seats waiting when we arrived. We liked to travel, anywhere in New England, San Diego in the winter, Texas, Florida, Ireland, and Italy. And a funny story about Ireland, I think this was in 2016, after landing at Shannon Airport and seeing the cliffs of Moher on a bright, sunny April morning, Joe told me to drive and that he would navigate. I knew we were going to see the Burren, but we ended up in the tiny town of Kilfenora. He had researched and found Nagle's Bar. That's just how he operated. I used to travel a lot for work, and every time I said I had a business trip coming up, it became, at the very least, a long weekend for us. Vacation allowed Joe to escape the challenges of work and to be totally at ease. Joe was not close with his family, but he sure loved to spend time with mine, especially at the holidays and special occasions. We also really loved our rare quiet evenings at home, especially with our dog Taylor, having a pizza, watching a game or a movie. We had a really good time together, and when I think of that time together, especially later in life, I think of Joe's mantra. So you've all heard of go big or go home. Well, Joe's was go bigger or just don't go. As I said, I could talk for hours about travels and concerts like U2. I'm a huge U2 fan, and every time they came, there were tickets waiting. The same thing with Elton John or great dinners out. Like all couples, we certainly had our share of challenges, our good and our bad times, our disagreements and arguments, but that's not how I choose to remember Joe. Our life together, because our life together, the good far outweighed the bad. Joe joined the Boston Police in 1989. In fact, I have the certificate from his last day at the police academy, dated August 4th, exactly 30 years to the day that he took his life. Joe's career at the Boston Police spanned a number of units: mobile ops, drug control, media relations, and prior to his death as an accident investigator. I only knew a few of the people that he worked with, but there's no doubt he was very well liked across the department. He worked hard, always doing a detail or working overtime. His favorite times were working during the holidays on Newbury Street in the Back Bay or at Fenway Park. Funny thing, there were many games that my best friend and I were let in through the side gate at Fenway to enjoy the game and have a few beers. Joe liked it. He knew we were safe, not out causing trouble, or so we thought. Joe really loved being a police officer, even when it was his most challenging. He was very proud of his career at the Boston Police and very proud of being on the Thin Blue Line. He always donated to fundraisers and officers and their families in need. When I met Joe, he was working in the anti-gang violence unit. I can't tell you how cool it was to be dating a police officer. I'm sure being a gay cop was difficult, but I only learned recently how badly Joe was harassed in the 90s for being gay. He never shared that with me. He shielded me from most, if not all, the bad stuff that the police officers endure. I didn't realize exactly what being a significant other to a police officer would entail over all those years. I never feared the phone call or the knock on the door. Only one time, in fact, was Joe brought home by fellow officers. It was in 2008. He was hit by a suspect on a motorized mini bike while he was on his bicycle patrolling the Fenway neighborhood. He suffered significant shoulder injuries, which resulted in 2 major operations. He was out of work for a few years, and when he finally returned to work in 2013, he was never the same. He had actually been hired to work for Major League Baseball as an authenticator at Fenway Park. He was going to be one of those guys that logged a used ball or bat so the collectors knew it was the real deal. He was to have started that part-time job on the Thursday after he died. It was his step towards retirement. People are finally talking about the epidemic of suicide amongst first responders, and given that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it only appropriate to speak about Joe's suicide. What I've learned is that Joe likely suffered from depression and internal pain, and suicide was his solution to ending that pain. It was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I talk openly about Joe's suicide. I'm confident that in some way, Joe sent all the help that he didn't get to me, be it from Boston Police peer support, Survivors of Blue Suicide, which I'm a member in the Survivors Advisory Council, and Concerns of Police Survivors. I have the honor of telling our story to other survivors and speaking at Traumas for Law Enforcement trainings. It's important to note that the Boston Police Department was one of the first in the nation to recognize those officers who died by suicide, placing a memorial at headquarters. This was done in the late summer of 2020. The commissioner at the time, Willie Gross, a classmate of Joe's, made it his personal mission. I've worked very hard not to focus on how Joe died because it happened and I can't change that. Rather, I try to focus on how he and how we lived. All the photos show a happy, funny, and kind man. There's a balance in moving forward for all of us in this room. Working through grief and trauma while trying to live a happy life, which is what I know Joe would want. It's what all of our heroes want for us. I honor Joe by keeping some of our traditions, like decorating the house in white lights at Christmas, going to our favorite restaurants, but also by starting new traditions like traveling to new places. I honor Joe by telling our story and hoping that in doing so, at least one life is saved from suicide. I say his name every day. I learned from early on from a friend that you never get over this, you just move forward, integrating the loss into my life and making it a chapter in my book. I've accepted that I'll never know why this happened. I was able to download our entire text message string into a PDF. It's over 3,600 pages long. I scanned the entire document. There were mundane texts about what to have for dinner, apologies for drinking or an argument. There were pictures from vacations, holidays, sporting events, and loads of selfies. There were lots of heart emojis, but there was no why. Those questions will not be answered, and I had to make peace with that. As we go forward today, I ask that each of you honor the lives of our fallen heroes by living our lives, allowing our loved ones to see life through us, knowing that they are walking beside us, to smile, to laugh, occasionally to pause, and most importantly, to love. Thank you.
Joining us also today is Greg's partner, Chris, and Dave McClellan, who brought his name to me so we could honor him today.